This is your macroeconomics video on basic T accounts. Now, a T account is a simplified accounting statement that a bank has to do, and it shows on one side a bank's assets and then a bank's liabilities on the other side. So I've created this fake T account for First National Bank. Assets to the bank are things that the bank owns or has available, and liabilities are things that could harm the bank or go away. So on the asset side, we're going to assume that a customer has deposited $100 into this particular bank. Now, if this is their only customer and there's only $100 in the bank, this is a liability to the bank because that customer can withdraw that money at any time, use their debit card, withdraw it at an ATM, and that money would be gone. And the bank has to give them access to that $100. But on the asset side, we're going to balance the $100 deposit with what the bank is going to do with that money. So obviously we've talked about required reserves, and we're going to say that in this particular bank, the reserve requirement is a 10% requirement, or 0.10. That means that this bank is required to keep $10 of the $100 in required reserves. This bank could keep excess reserves if they want. I did not put a space here for them to do that. So this bank is going to loan out all $90, which is remaining from after the excess reserves, after the required reserves. Now, the reserves of $10 in cash is an asset to the bank because that's cash that they have on hand. The loan is also considered an asset to the bank because when they loan out this $90 to another customer, that customer agrees to pay it back with interest. So this loan of $90 is going to be profitable for the bank should that borrower actually pay it back on time with interest. And that's where the bank's going to make their money. Now, the bank's T account has to balance. So on one side we had $100 and on the other side we had $100. But remember, we also talked about systems that have no banking system or a 100% reserve system. So in a 100% reserve system, similar to a Swiss bank, they would put $100 that was deposited into the bank. $100 of that would go directly into reserves, and they do not loan any money out. So the money supply of a country is always going to equal the amount of currency plus deposited money in banks. So in this particular 100% reserve system, the money supply would stay $100. They are not actually loaning money to anybody. Remember, if you get a loan or a credit card, that's you getting credit from the bank, and they're going to issue you more money than what you have in cash. But because 100% reserve systems do not issue credit, a 100% reserve banking system cannot affect the size of the money supply. So in our type of system, which is a fractional reserve system, you can get extra credit from the bank by borrowing money on a loan or a credit card. And you can also earn interest on your saved money. So we're going to pretend this is now a fractional reserve bank and there is a required reserve of 10%. I'm also in this example going to kind of use it as the kind of perfect example. We're going to assume that every depositor puts money into a bank. The banks all keep the required 10%, but loan out everything else that's possible. So none of the banks in the system are going to keep any excess reserves. And then all of the depositors are going to redeposit the money without spending it. So this is a slightly abnormal example, but you'll see why we're doing this in a second. So this is our First National Bank example. Depositor has deposited $100 into this bank, which the bank holds as a liability. They could choose to reserve all $100 of it, but because this is a fractional reserve bank, they are required to keep 10 and they want to make some profit. So they're going to loan out $90. Our money supply in this country is now $190 because the money supply is the deposits or how much cash you have on hand plus the money that you've loaned out of $90. So our money supply just went up from $100 to $90 just because this bank loaned out some money. And here's why. The person who deposited $100 has access to the $100 and they can spend that at any time. But this second customer came in, got a loan of $90 today. Yes, that customer has agreed to pay it back with interest over time, but today they walk away from the bank with $90 that they can spend today. So now we have two customers spending a total of $190 today. So we've increased the amount of spending from $100 to $190. Now, there's some differences here. The person who borrowed money got $90 in currency today from the bank. So that to the borrower is an asset. That borrower has cash on hand. But the borrower has a liability now. The borrower is required by law and legal contract to pay it back, all $90 plus interest over time. The depositor still has access to their $100 cash, and they can use it or keep it in the bank as they see fit. And remember, for the bank itself, the $100 in cash as a deposit is an asset, but the loan is a liability, and the loan to the borrower is an asset because that's where they're going to make profits. It's important to remember that a fractional reserve banking system generates money but not wealth. And there's a difference. Money is just something we use to buy things with. Wealth is the value of the things we own after we've paid off our debts. So the borrower here has $90, but the borrower is going to have to pay back more than $90. So even though the borrower can spend money today, they're going to accrue more debt than they are wealth because they borrowed the money to do it. All right, let's continue with our example. So now we have our second depositor who has $90 in borrowed money that they borrowed from First National Bank. I've now created Second National Bank. This is a competitor bank in the exact same free market banking system. They haven't decided what they're going to buy with their $90. So they go to their account at Second National Bank, and now they have deposited the $90. That is a liability for the bank because this depositor can, of course, spend it. And then on the asset side, this bank is a fractional reserve bank in a system that still has a 10% reserve requirement. So they're required to keep $9 on hand, and they can loan out a maximum of $81. Let's say that they do that. So borrower 3 is going to get $81, and let's say that they also have not decided what they're going to buy with it, so they go over to their bank, Third National Bank, and deposit it. Now, of course, they are required reserves of $8.10, and they can loan out a maximum of $72.90. So this is our fourth borrower who gets a loan of $72.90. And remember, all of this money that's being borrowed and loaned out is coming from the original $100 cash that the first borrower deposited. Now, you'll notice that this can keep going on and on and on again until there's no money left. If this process continues, we're just generating more and more money in spending, but more and more debt, not wealth. If we ultimately had an original $100 deposit and we continued with this process to its maximum, the total money supply would end up being $1,000. Now, in this example, $100 turned into $1,000 of money supply and spending. And there are a couple of things in this example which are not so true to life. Remember, every bank in the system loaned out its maximum amount possible with keeping no excess reserves. That's really unusual. And every single borrower in our example immediately deposited all of their loaned money into another bank. Most people who borrow money are expecting to buy something. And so even if the money is there temporarily, they do spend it on something like a house or a car, and then continue to save only a portion of the money that they had saved. But this $100 deposit could lead to a maximum total money supply of $1,000 or a growth of $900.